I left Spokane around 9 in the morning because I wanted to hit Priest Lake before the weekend crowd clogged the parking at the boat ramps. 3 hours north, maybe a little more depending on construction through Sandpoint. I'd mapped it the night before on my laptop while fielding a ticket from accounting about password resets. Again. That was the thing about remote IT for a medical billing company. People assumed I was always available. Evenings, weekends, didn't matter. My phone buzzed with Slack messages at midnight from people who couldn't log into systems I didn't even manage. So yeah, I needed this. Priest Lake wasn't my first choice. I'd looked at cabins near Lake Coeur d'Alene, closer, easier. But everything decent was booked or cost more than I wanted to spend. Priest Lake had availability. East side near Kalispell Bay, a place called the Pinecrest Cottage listed by someone named Madeline Perkins. 3 bedrooms, full kitchen, dock access. $200 a night, which wasn't bad. Split 3 ways. I didn't plan on splitting it 3 ways. I planned on bringing Megan because she'd been texting me for 2 weeks about finals and how her sociology professor kept moving deadlines and how her roommate's boyfriend basically lived in their dorm now. She's my younger sister, 20 years old, junior at Eastern Washington. She gets wound up, and I'm the one she calls. Always have been, probably always will be. I figured getting her out of Cheney for a weekend would help. Let her sleep in, sit by the water, whatever. Just decompress. Then she asked if Carson could come. Carson Barton, boyfriend of 3 months, sandy hair, always wearing a puffer vest even when it wasn't cold. One of those guys who called everything sick or fire without irony. I'd met him twice. Once when he picked Megan up from my apartment for some concert in Spokane, and once when they came over for dinner and he spent half the meal on his phone looking at sneaker drops on StockX. I said sure because saying no would have made me the asshole older brother, and honestly, I didn't care that much. It was a 3-bedroom rental. He could stay in his own room or share with Megan. I wasn't going to police it. As long as they didn't make the weekend about them, we'd be fine. I kept things simple. Pick them up from Megan's dorm, take Highway 95 north, stay on schedule. No detours. Carson suggested we stop at some trail he'd seen on Instagram near Bonner's Ferry. I said no. Megan wanted to grab coffee in Sandpoint at a place she'd been to once. I said we'd stop on the way back if there was time. I wasn't trying to be a hard ass. I just wanted to get there, unload, and not think about ticket queues or 2-factor authentication or any of it. The drive was fine, quiet for the first hour. Megan sat up front with me, Carson in the back with his headphones on. She asked if I'd heard from Mom. I said no. She asked if I was still seeing that woman from the climbing gym. I said that ended a month ago. She nodded and went back to scrolling her phone. We didn't need to fill every silence. That's one thing I appreciated about Megan. She knew when to let it sit. We hit Priest Lake a little after noon. The east side was quieter than the west. Fewer resorts, more private cabins tucked into the pines. The road narrowed past Kalispell Bay, turned to gravel for a stretch, then back to cracked pavement. I followed the GPS to a turnoff marked by a weathered wooden sign that said, Pinecrest. The driveway curved down through thick trees and opened up to a small clearing with the cabin dead center. It looked fine. Brown-stained wood, green metal roof, a deck that wrapped around the front, stone chimney on the left side. The lake sat maybe 30 yards past the cabin, visible through the trees. I could see the dock from the car. Gray wood, T-shaped, with a bench at the end. I parked next to the cabin and turned off the engine. Megan got out first, stretching her arms over her head. Carson pulled his headphones down and looked around. "This is it?" he said. "This is it," I said. Sick. I grabbed my duffel from the trunk and walked up to the front door. The lockbox was right where Madeline's message said it'd be, mounted next to the door frame. I punched in the code, 4729, and pulled out the key. Standard brass house key, no label. Inside smelled like pine cleaner and something faintly sweet. Fake cinnamon, maybe. The front door opened into a combined living room and kitchen. Couch and armchair on the left facing a wood stove, kitchen on the right with a small table pushed against the window. Everything clean but worn. Laminate counters, older appliances, cabinets painted white a long time ago. The kind of rental that was functional and nothing else. I dropped my bag by the couch and walked over to the kitchen table. That's where I saw the sheet. It sat in the center of the table, laminated, letter-sized. The title at the top was printed in bold, Lake House Rules. I picked it up. The lamination was thick, the kind you'd get done at a FedEx print shop. Someone had put effort into this. Megan came in behind me, dragging her backpack. "What's that?" "House rules," I said. "Like don't smoke indoors." Something like that. I read the first rule out loud. No use of the dock after sundown. Carson stepped inside, looking at his phone. "Why not?" "Doesn't say." I kept reading. "No boats or watercraft after dark. Do not answer if you hear your name called from the water, especially after sunset." Megan stopped pulling things out of her bag. "That's weird." "Yeah." I scanned the next few lines. "If you see an unlit boat on the water at night, do not shine a flashlight or any light source toward it. Turn away and go inside immediately." Carson laughed. "Is this like a horror movie thing?" I didn't answer. I kept reading. "If fog rolls in from the lake, close all window curtains and do not look outside until it clears. If you sustain any injury that causes bleeding while near the lake, rinse the wound immediately, with the salt solution stored under the kitchen sink. Do not let blood enter the water." There was a pause. Megan walked over and looked at the sheet over my shoulder. "That's a lot," she said. "There's more." I pointed to the bottom. "Additional rules may be provided during your stay. All rules must be followed without exception. Thank you for respecting the lake and your safety. Enjoy your stay." The sign-off had a little smiley face next to Madeline's name. I set the sheet back down on the table. Carson was grinning. "Dude, this is some Blair Witch stuff. I love it." "It's probably just local superstition," Megan said, but her voice didn't sound sure. I walked over to the sink and opened the cabinet underneath. There was a spray bottle in the back, clear plastic, filled with liquid, and labeled in neat handwriting. "Salt rinse, for injuries only." "She wasn't kidding about that part," I said. Megan leaned against the counter. "Do you think it's real? Like, do you think she actually believes this?" I closed the cabinet and straightened up. "I think she's running a rental and she wants to cover herself if someone does something stupid and gets hurt." "By telling them not to answer the lake," Carson said, still smiling. "By telling them to stay off the dock at night so they don't fall in and drown, yeah." I looked at the sheet again. It bugged me a little. Not the rules themselves. People put weird stuff in rental agreements all the time. But the tone, the specificity, the bit at the end about additional rules. I picked up the sheet one more time and read that line again. "Additional rules may be provided during your stay." "Provided how?" I said out loud. Megan frowned. "What?" "It says more rules might show up. How? Is she going to stop by, leave notes?" "Maybe she'll text you," Carson said. "Maybe." I pulled out my phone and checked my messages. Nothing new from the number Madeline had used to send the check-in instructions. No emails either. I set the sheet back down. Whatever, it's probably just themed. You know, like those murder mystery dinner things. "Have you ever been to one of those?" Megan asked. "No." "Then how do you know?" I didn't. I was guessing. But the alternative was taking it seriously, and I wasn't going to do that. Not on the first day. Not when I'd driven 3 hours to stop thinking about problems for 2 days. "Let's just unpack," I said. Carson grabbed his bag and headed toward the hall where the bedrooms were. Megan lingered by the table, looking at the laminated sheet one more time. "Steven?" "Yeah? Do you think we should follow them? The rules?" I looked at her. She wasn't joking. "Yeah," I said. We'll follow them. She nodded, picked up her backpack, walked down the hall after Carson. I stayed in the kitchen. I read the rules one more time, start to finish. No dock after sundown, no boats after dark. Don't answer your name, don't shine lights. Close the curtains if fog comes. Rinse blood with salt. I folded my arms. It felt like a gimmick. It had to be. But the last line stuck with me. All rules must be followed without exception. I turned and looked out the kitchen window. The lake stretched out past the trees, flat and gray-blue under the afternoon sky. Quiet. Still. I figured we'd be fine as long as we didn't do anything stupid. That was the plan. I was still standing in the kitchen when Carson came back from the bedroom hallway and headed straight for the back door. Didn't say anything. Just walked past me and out onto the small back deck. I followed him to the doorway. "What are you doing?" "There's a shed," he called back. There was. Small thing, maybe 8 feet by 10, tucked into the trees about 20 yards behind the cabin. Same brown stain as the house, door hanging a little crooked. Carson was already halfway there. I stepped outside. The air smelled like pine and cold water. Megan appeared beside me, tugging her sweatshirt sleeves down over her hands. "What's he doing?" she asked. "Being Carson." We watched him reach the shed and pull the door open. It stuck part way and he had to yank it. Then he disappeared inside. Megan shifted her weight. "Should we—" Carson reappeared, grinning. "Yo, there's a canoe." That figured. Lots of lake cabins had one. Probably came with the property when Madeline bought it or inherited it or whatever. He dragged it out. Small aluminum thing, maybe 12 feet long, dented along one side. The kind you'd find at a yard sale for $50. He flipped it over and checked the inside, then looked back at us. "We should take it out." Megan perked up immediately. "Yeah?" "It's got a paddle and everything." Carson held up a wooden paddle with a crack running through the blade. Not broken all the way through, but close. I walked over. The canoe looked old but functional. No major holes that I could see. The seats were just aluminum benches riveted to the frame. "It floats?" I asked. "Only one way to find out." Megan was already coming down the deck steps. "Can we? I haven't been in a canoe since like middle school." I looked at the sky. Still overcast, but not threatening. Checked my watch. 2:43, plenty of daylight left. "Close to shore," I said. Carson hoisted one end. "Deal." I grabbed the other end and we carried it toward the lake. Wasn't heavy, maybe 60 pounds. We maneuvered it between the trees and down a narrow path that led to the water. Megan followed, phone already out, probably planning to document the whole thing for her Instagram story. The dock sat to our left, but we took the canoe to a small strip of rocky beach to the right. Easier to launch from there. We set it down at the water's edge, and I crouched to check the hull one more time. No cracks I could see, the aluminum was cold under my hands. "I call front," Carson said. "You're paddling then?" I told him. "That's fine." Megan looked between us. "Where do I sit?" "Middle," I said. "Keep the weight balanced." Carson pushed the canoe halfway into the water, then climbed in, wobbling a little as he settled onto the front bench. Megan went next, stepping carefully and gripping both sides. I steadied the canoe from the beach, then gave it a shove and climbed into the back as it slid forward. Cold water soaked through my sneakers. Should have taken them off. Too late now. I grabbed the paddle from where Carson had tossed it and pushed us away from shore. The crack in the blade didn't seem to affect much. Still moved water fine. Carson trailed his hand over the side. "It's freezing." "It's a mountain lake in spring," I said. Megan had her phone up, taking a video of the shoreline. "This is so pretty." It was, I guess. The cabin sat back in the trees, chimney visible above the roofline. The dock stretched out into the water, gray and weathered. Farther down the shore I could see other cabins, spaced far apart. most of them tucked into the pines the same way ours was. I paddled us out about 30 yards and then just let us drift. The water was dark, not murky, just deep-looking. Calm, too. Barely a ripple except what we made. "How deep you think it is?" Carson asked. "Here? Maybe 20 feet. I didn't actually know. Just a guess." Megan leaned over the side a little, looking down. "I can't see the bottom." "Don't lean too far," I said. She sat back up. "I'm not gonna fall in." Carson shifted in his seat, rocking the canoe slightly. "We should go out farther. We're good here." "Come on, man. Just a little more." I glanced toward the northwest. The sky looked heavier in that direction, clouds starting to stack up. "Weather's coming in." "It's fine." We agreed close to shore. Megan turned to look at me. "It's not that far." I sighed and gave the water a few more strokes, taking us maybe another 20 yards out. That was it. I stopped paddling and let the canoe drift again. The lake was quiet. No boats that I could see. No one on the docks. Just us and the water and the trees all around. Carson pulled his phone out and took a picture of the shore. "No signal out here," he said. "Didn't have much at the cabin either." "Yeah, but like 0 bars now." Megan checked hers. "Same." I hadn't expected great service. We were pretty far from anything. The canoe drifted in a slow circle. I let it. The water was so still it felt weird to break it with the paddle. Megan pulled her knees up to her chest. "It's colder out here." She was right. The air off the water had a bite to it. I checked the sky again. The clouds were definitely moving in, darker now, coming from the northwest like I thought. "We should head back," I said. Carson groaned. "We just got out here. And now we're going back." 5 more minutes. "Look at the clouds." He looked, didn't argue after that. I turned the canoe with a few strokes and started paddling us toward shore. The cabin came back into view, small and brown among the trees. The paddle made soft splashing sounds every time it cut the water. Megan had put her phone away. She was just sitting there, arms wrapped around her knees, staring at the water. "You good?" I asked. "Yeah, just cold." Carson trailed his hand in the water again. Seriously freezing. I kept paddling. We were maybe 40 yards out now, moving steady. The shore didn't look that far. Couple more minutes and we'd be back at the beach. That's when I heard it. My name. Soft, close. Right behind me. Not shouted, just spoken. The way someone would say it if they were leaning over my shoulder. "Stephen." I stopped paddling, turned around. Flat water, nothing else. No one there, no boat, no person. Just the lake stretching out behind us, gray and empty under the clouds. My chest went tight. "Did you hear that?" I asked. Megan looked back at me. "Hear what?" "Someone said my name." Carson turned too, scanning the water. "I didn't hear anything." I stared at the lake behind us. Still nothing. Just ripples from where we'd been. But I'd heard it. Clear as anything. "Stephen." Right there, right behind me. The rule came back. Do not answer if you hear your name called from the water, especially after sunset. It wasn't sunset. It was mid-afternoon. Overcast, yeah, but still daylight. "Hello?" I called back. Stupid. Reflexive. The same annoyed response I'd give to someone pinging me on Slack at 9 p.m. on a Friday. Nobody answered. Megan was watching me now. "Stephen, what's wrong?" "Nothing." I turned back around and started paddling, harder this time. "You look weird," she said. "I'm fine." Carson was still looking behind us. "You really heard something?" "Thought I did." "Like what?" "Doesn't matter, let's just get back." I put more force into each stroke. The canoe picked up speed, cutting through the water toward shore. The beach was maybe 30 yards away now, close enough to see the rocks clearly. My shoulders felt tight, that prickling sensation you get when someone's watching you, except there was no one there to watch. I didn't look back again. Carson faced forward, quiet for once. Megan kept her arms wrapped around her knees. The canoe scraped against the rocky beach, and I practically jumped out, grabbing the side to steady it. Megan climbed out next, then Carson. We dragged the canoe up onto the beach, flipped it over, and left it there. I'd deal with putting it back in the shed later. "That was fun," Carson said, but his voice didn't sound convinced. Megan didn't say anything, just headed for the cabin. I followed, Carson behind me. My sneakers squished with every step, still soaked from launching the canoe. Cold water pressed against my socks. Inside, the cabin felt warmer, safer, which was stupid. Nothing had happened out there. Just my name. From nowhere. Megan went straight to the couch and pulled a blanket over herself. Carson grabbed a spot in the armchair, checking his phone even though he knew there was barely any signal. I walked to the kitchen table. The laminated rules sheet was still there, exactly where I'd left it. Do not answer if you hear your name called from the water, especially after sunset. I'd answered. But it wasn't after sunset. It was the middle of the afternoon. Overcast, sure, but daylight. The rule specifically said, especially after sunset, which implied it mattered less during the day. Right? I read the line again. Do not answer if you hear your name called from the water, especially after sunset. Not only after sunset, just especially. My stomach dropped a little. You okay? Megan called from the couch. Yeah. I turned away from the table. Just checking something. Checking what? Nothing important? She didn't push it. Carson was scrolling through something on his phone, probably cached Instagram posts from before we lost signal. I walked to the front window and looked out at the lake. Still gray, still flat, still empty. Nothing had changed. We'd gone out, heard something weird. I'd heard something weird. And come back. That was it. Probably just sound carrying weird over water. Someone on another dock farther down, their voice traveling in a strange way. That happened sometimes. Acoustic quirks. Made sense. Except it had sounded so close. Right behind me. I stepped back from the window. The rules sheet sat on the table, laminated and precise, with its neat list of things not to do. It didn't feel like a joke anymore. Didn't feel like liability protection either. I looked at Megan on the couch, then at Carson in the chair, then back at the lake through the window. We'd be fine. We were inside now. We'd follow the rules. Actually follow them, not just humor them, and everything would be fine. That was the plan. I just needed to shake off whatever that was out on the water and keep the weekend normal. Back inside, things felt normal for maybe 20 minutes. That was it. I tried to keep everyone settled. Megan stayed on the couch with the blanket pulled up to her chin, scrolling through old photos on her phone. Stuff she'd already downloaded, I guessed, since there wasn't signal. Carson sat in the armchair, tapping at his screen, probably doing the same thing. I unpacked groceries in the kitchen. Bread, peanut butter, a box of pasta, jar of sauce, some apples that were already going soft. I'd grabbed everything at a Safeway in Sandpoint on the way up. Hadn't planned meals, just threw things in the cart that seemed easy. I set the pasta box on the counter and checked my watch. 3:27. Plenty of daylight left, but the clouds had thickened since we'd come in from the lake. The window over the sink showed gray sky and darker gray water through the trees. I filled a glass at the tap and drank it standing there, looking at the laminated rules sheet still sitting in the middle of the table. Don't answer if you hear your name called from the water. I'd heard it, clear as anything, right behind me, close enough that I'd turned expecting to see someone leaning over my shoulder in the canoe. But there'd been nothing, just flat water and distance, probably wind, I figured, sound carrying weird across the lake. Maybe someone on the far shore, voice bouncing off the surface. That happens sometimes with water. Carson's phone started buzzing on the armchair's armrest. He picked it up, frowned at the screen, and let it keep vibrating. It went for maybe 8 seconds, then stopped. 5 seconds later, it started again. "You gonna get that?" I said. He shook his head. "Unknown number. 3rd time. Could be important. I don't know the number." He held up the phone so I could see from across the room. The screen looked wrong, dull gray instead of the usual bright whites and colors. The caller ID just said unknown. No area code, no digits, just that word in capital letters. The vibration stopped again. Megan glanced over. "Mine's been doing that too." I walked over. "Doing what?" "Calls, like 4 or 5, all unknown." She pulled her phone out from under the blanket and showed me. Same dull gray screen, same unknown label in the call log, repeated 6 times in the last 10 minutes. I didn't hear it ring though, just saw the missed calls when I checked. "Did you answer any of them?" "No, I don't answer unknowns." She swiped at the screen and the display flickered, went black for a second, then came back. "It's being weird too. Keeps dimming." Carson's phone buzzed again. He declined the call this time, jabbing the screen hard enough that I heard the plastic creak. The buzzing stopped immediately. He set the phone face down on the armrest and leaned back. "If it's important, they'll leave a message." I pulled out my own phone. 2 bars of signal, same as before. No missed calls. But there was a voicemail icon in the top corner. 1 new message. I hadn't heard it ring either. I tapped the icon and the voicemail screen opened. The message was time-stamped 11 minutes ago. No number attached, just a blank space where the caller info should have been. I stared at it. My thumb hovered over the play button. Megan sat up a little. "You got one too?" "Yeah." "Play it," Carson said. I don't know why I didn't. Something about the blank space where a number should be. Something about the dull gray on their screens and the way mine felt heavier than usual in my hand, like the message had weight. I locked the screen, set the phone face down on the kitchen counter, and turned back to the groceries. "Not playing it?" Megan asked. "Probably spam," I said. "Robocall or something." Robocalls don't usually leave voicemails with no number. "Then it's a glitch." I grabbed the pasta box again and stuck it in one of the white cabinets above the stove. "We've got barely any signal out here. Phones are gonna act weird." She didn't push it. Carson picked up his phone again, checked the screen, then put it back down. Nobody said anything for a bit. I kept unpacking. Put the bread in the cabinet, sauce next to the pasta, peanut butter in the fridge, even though it didn't need to be refrigerated. My mom always kept it in the fridge. That's just what I did. I focused on getting through to dinner. That was the plan. Make food, eat it, stay inside, follow the rules, don't do anything stupid. Tomorrow we'd go home early if things still felt off. I'd tell Megan and Carson I had a work emergency. Something broke, needed to get back to Spokane. They wouldn't argue. Easy. Dinner was pasta with jarred sauce. I boiled water in a dented aluminum pot I found in the cabinet, dumped in half the box, stirred it twice. Megan set the table with paper plates from the grocery bag. Carson stayed in the armchair until I told him food was ready. We ate at the small table by the kitchen window, nobody talking much. The sauce was too sweet and the pasta was a little undercooked, but I didn't care. I just wanted to get through it. Megan finished first and took her plate to the sink. She rinsed it, set it in the dish rack, then walked to the window and looked out. The light had gone flat and gray, that weird in-between stage before actual dusk. "I want pictures on the dock," she said. I looked up from my plate. "What?" "Pictures, before it gets too dark." She turned around, already pulling her phone out. "The lighting's perfect right now, all moody." I shook my head. "First rule, No dock after sundown. It's not sundown yet. It's like, she checked her phone. 5:40. Sun doesn't set until almost 8. Doesn't matter. It says after sundown. We're not risking it. Risking what? She walked over to the table, phone in hand. It's still light out, Stephen. I just want a couple pictures. Then take them from the window. That's not the same. Carson pushed his plate away and stood up. I'll go with her. We'll be fast. No, I said. He was already heading for the door. Relax, man. It's not even close to dark. I stood up fast enough that my chair scraped loud against the floor. Carson, stop. He didn't stop. He pulled open the front door and stepped out onto the deck, holding his phone up already. Megan followed him, glancing back at me with this look that wasn't quite apologetic, but wasn't defiant either. Just excited. Like she'd already decided it was fine and I was being paranoid. I followed. What else was I supposed to do? Let them go out there alone while I sat inside? The air outside was colder than I expected. I should have grabbed my hoodie but didn't want to waste time going back. Carson was already halfway down the deck steps, Megan right behind him. I jogged to catch up, my wet sneakers still damp from earlier and cold against my socks. Just a couple pictures, Megan said over her shoulder. Then we'll come in. The path to the dock was narrow, just dirt and pine needles between the trees. Carson reached the dock first and walked out onto the weathered gray boards without slowing. The dock extended maybe 40 feet into the water, T-shaped at the end with a bench facing out toward the lake. Megan stopped at the start of the dock and turned, holding her phone up for a selfie with the lake behind her. I stopped too, a few feet back from the dock's edge. The water looked darker than it had earlier, flat, no wind, no ripples, just smooth and still, stretching out to where the far shore was barely visible through the haze. Carson kept walking to the end of the dock, phone raised. This view's sick, he called back. I scanned the water past him. There were buoys out there marking something. Maybe a swimming area, maybe a no-wake zone, white and orange, bobbing slightly, maybe 50 yards out. And past that, I stopped. There was something out there. Low on the water, dark, unlit, not moving. Just sitting there maybe 70 or 80 yards out. A shape that didn't match the flat line of the horizon. Carson, I said. He wasn't listening. He'd reached the bench at the end of the dock and was aiming his phone at the water, tilting it to get the angle right. Carson, get back here. Megan lowered her phone and looked at me. What's wrong? I pointed past the buoys. There's something out there. She turned, squinting. Where? Past the buoys. Left side. You see it? She stared for a few seconds, then nodded slowly. Yeah. Is that a boat? I don't know. Carson heard us and turned, following our gaze. Oh shit, yeah. There's totally a boat out there. It doesn't have lights, I said. Maybe it's anchored, Carson said. He raised his phone, tapping the screen. I'm gonna get a closer look. Don't. The flashlight on his phone flicked on, a bright white beam cutting across the water. It reached the shape, hit it square in the center, and died. Not faded. Died. Like the light got swallowed the second it touched whatever was out there. Carson's phone screen went black in his hand. What the hell? Carson tapped the screen, shook the phone. Nothing. Completely dead. I moved fast, grabbing his arm and yanking him back toward the shore. We're going. Now. My phone! Leave it. Move. Megan was already backing up, her face pale. I pulled Carson past her and kept going, not stopping until we were off the dock and back on the dirt path. My heart was hammering. I turned to look back at the water. The shape was still there. Still unlit. Still low and wrong against the flat gray surface. And then I saw the reflections. Ours. Mine, Megan's, Carson's. Visible in the water near the dock's edge where the surface was smooth enough to catch the dim light. Except they didn't match. I turned my head to the left. My reflection turned a beat later. Not at the same time. A full second delay, like it was watching something behind me first before it followed. Megan's reflection stood completely still, even though she was shifting her weight from foot to foot. Carson's lifted its arm and pointed toward the shape on the water. I grabbed Megan and Carson both and shoved them toward the cabin. Inside. Right now. This time they didn't argue. I didn't wait for either of them to argue. Soon as we got back to the deck, I opened the door and told them to get inside. Megan tried to say something about just wanting pictures, but I cut her off. Told her I didn't care. Carson had that look on his face where he was deciding whether to push back, but I didn't give him the chance. I pointed at the door and said, "Inside now." They went. I followed and locked the door behind me. The brass deadbolt made a solid click that felt better than it should have. Carson dropped onto the couch and pulled out his phone. Megan stood by the kitchen table with her arms crossed, watching me. I walked past her to the window and checked the dock one more time. Still empty, still just weathered gray wood and flat water beyond it. The figure I'd seen, or thought I'd seen, was gone. Maybe it had never been there. Maybe my brain just filled in shapes from shadows and distance. I didn't believe that. "We're leaving in the morning," I said. Megan turned toward me. "What?" "First light. We pack up. We go." Carson looked up from his phone. "Dude, we just got here." "I don't care. It's one night," Megan said. Her voice had that edge she got when she thought I was being overprotective. "We paid for 3. I'll eat the cost." She started to say something else, but I held up my hand. "I'm done pretending this is some gimmick Madeline cooked up for atmosphere. The rules aren't a game. Something's wrong here and I'm not risking it." Carson slouched lower on the couch. "What did you even see out there?" "Someone on the dock." "So? Maybe it was another guest." "There aren't other guests. This whole stretch is empty." I checked the window again. Nothing had changed. And the rule said no dock after sundown. Whoever that was broke it. "Or maybe the rule's fake," Carson said. He didn't sound convinced. Just tired. I let it drop. Didn't matter what they thought. We were leaving and that was it. Megan sat down at the table and pulled her knees up to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. She didn't look at me. Carson went back to his phone, scrolling through something that had probably loaded hours ago since there was still barely any signal. I stayed by the window until the light outside went from dull gray to darker gray. Then I moved to the couch and sat on the far end from Carson. Nobody talked much after that. Megan got up once to grab a blanket from the bedroom and came back wrapped in it. Carson asked if there was anything to drink, and I told him water from the tap. He didn't get up. I checked my watch. 9:40, then 10, then 10:23. I kept my phone face down on the coffee table. I hadn't checked the voicemail. Wasn't going to. At 10:30 exactly, the power went out. The hum from the fridge cut off first. Then the small lamp by the armchair went dark. The whole cabin dropped into blackness so complete I couldn't see my hand in front of my face. Megan made a sharp inhale across the room. Carson swore under his breath. I waited for my eyes to adjust, but the darkness didn't lift. No moon outside. No ambient light from neighboring cabins. Just solid black pressing in from every direction. "Stephen." Megan's voice came from where the table was, small, shaky. "Stay put," I said. "I'll find a flashlight." I stood and immediately regretted it. Couldn't see the coffee table, the couch, anything. I took one careful step toward where I remembered the kitchen being, and my shin hit something hard, the table edge. I bit back a curse and felt my way around it, hands out in front of me. My palm hit the counter, and I followed it toward the drawers. I pulled open the first one. Silverware clattered. Wrong drawer. I moved left and tried again. This one had the junk. Rubber bands, a corkscrew, something plastic that might have been a spatula. I swept my hand through and felt nothing useful. Third drawer. My fingers hit something smooth and cylindrical. I pulled it out and found a button on the side, pressed it. White LED light flooded the kitchen, so bright after the dark that I had to squint. It was a battery-powered lantern, the kind you'd take camping. Compact, maybe 8 inches tall, with a metal handle on top. I held it up and turned back toward the living room. Megan was standing now, one hand gripping the back of a chair. Carson hadn't moved from the couch, but his eyes were locked on the lantern. "There's more," I said, looking back into the drawer. There were 4 more lanterns lined up perfectly inside. Same make, same size. All with fresh batteries based on how bright mine was. I pulled another one out and clicked it on, then a third. The cabin filled with cold white light that made everything look washed out and strange. Megan walked over and took one of the lanterns from the counter. She knew the power would go out. Yeah. She left these here on purpose. I didn't answer. It was obvious. Madeline had stocked the drawer with enough lanterns for exactly this situation, arranged them neatly, made sure they'd be easy to find. She'd planned for it. Carson got up and came to the kitchen, taking the 4th lantern without asking. He set it on the table, and the overlapping light made sharp shadows on the walls. I put one lantern on the counter and kept one in my hand. "I'm checking for candles," I said. Didn't know why. Just felt like we should have backup. I opened the cabinet above the fridge. Cleaning supplies. The one next to it had stacked plates and bowls. I moved to the narrow cabinet beside the stove and pulled it open. Top shelf had a box of matches and 2 emergency candles still in plastic. Bottom shelf had a clean plastic Ziploc bag sitting by itself. I pulled the bag out. Inside was a single salt packet, the kind you'd get from a fast food place, and a yellow sticky note folded in half. The bag was sealed. The note had neat handwriting in black ink visible through the plastic. I set my lantern on the counter and opened the bag. The sticky note came out easily. I unfolded it. The handwriting matched the signature on the laminated rules sheet. Madeline's. It said, "If the lantern flickers 3 times in a row, do not speak until it stops. Stay silent. Wait." I read it twice. "What is it?" Megan asked. I looked up. She was standing a few feet away, her lantern casting her face in harsh relief. Carson had moved closer too, his lantern still on the table behind him. I opened my mouth to answer. The lantern on the counter flickered. Just once. A quick dip in brightness, then back to full. I froze, the note still in my hand. It flickered again, longer this time. The light dropped almost to nothing, held there for a full second, then surged back. My pulse kicked up. I looked at Megan. Her eyes were wide, locked on the lantern. The 3rd flicker came. The light died completely, plunging the kitchen into shadow lit only by the lanterns behind us. It stayed dark for 2 seconds. 3. My hand tightened on the note. "What's happening?" Megan started. I threw my hand up in a cutting gesture, sharp and fast, and made eye contact with her. I shook my head hard. She stopped mid-word, her mouth still open on the 2nd syllable she hadn't finished. The lantern flickered back on, but it wasn't steady. The light pulsed faintly, dimming and brightening in a slow rhythm that didn't match anything electrical I'd ever seen. The plastic casing creaked softly. I could hear it in the silence. Nobody moved. Megan's hand was pressed over her mouth now, her other hand gripping the edge of the counter. Carson stood completely still by the table, his face drained of color. I kept my eyes on the lantern, watching the uneven pulse of light, counting seconds in my head. 10 seconds, 15, 20. The pulsing slowed. The light steadied. The creaking stopped. The lantern sat on the counter, glowing clean and bright, exactly like it had before. Normal. Functional. Nothing wrong with it at all. The room felt like it was holding its breath. I lowered my hand slowly. Megan didn't take hers from her mouth. Carson exhaled, a shaky sound that seemed too loud. I looked down at the sticky note still gripped in my fingers, the neat black handwriting almost mocking in how calm it looked. Do not speak until it stops. We'd followed it. Barely. If I'd been 1 second slower, Megan would have finished her sentence and I didn't know what would have happened, but I knew it wouldn't have been good. I set the note on the counter next to the lantern, pressing it flat with my palm. My hand was shaking slightly. I pulled it back and shoved it in my pocket. Carson finally moved, sinking into one of the kitchen chairs. He looked drained. Worse than drained, he looked like he'd just run a mile or taken a hit he hadn't seen coming. His hands rested on the table, fingers spread, and he stared at them without blinking. Megan lowered her hand from her mouth. "Stephen, don't," I said. My voice came out rough. "Just don't." She nodded. I picked up my lantern from the counter and carried it to the living room, setting it on the coffee table. The overlapping light from the kitchen lanterns and this one made the space almost too bright, every detail sharp and exposed. I sat on the couch, keeping the lantern directly in front of me where I could see it. Megan came over with her lantern and set it on the floor near the armchair before curling up in the chair itself, pulling the blanket over her legs. Carson got up slowly from the kitchen table and grabbed his lantern, bringing it to the couch. He sat on the opposite end from me, leaving the middle cushion empty. He placed his lantern on the floor between his feet. We didn't talk about sleeping in the bedrooms. Wasn't even a question. We were staying together in this room with the lanterns and the light, and each other where we could see what was coming. I leaned back against the couch and kept my eyes on my lantern. It sat steady on the coffee table, bright and normal. I didn't trust it. Didn't trust any of this. Carson shifted beside me, pulling his knees up. Megan tucked herself tighter into the armchair, her face half hidden by the blanket. I checked my watch. 11:03. Hours until first light. Hours until we could pack up and leave and put this place behind us. I kept the lantern between us and waited to see what rule would come for us next. The first knock came at 12:14. I checked my watch before I even processed what the sound was. Slow, deliberate. 3 measured raps against the front door. I was on the couch. Carson was in the armchair, with his lantern on the table beside him. Megan had curled up at the other end of the couch around 11:30, wrapped in the blanket she'd brought from the bedroom, her head against the armrest. The knock pulled her upright like someone had yanked a string. Her eyes were wide, unfocused. She started to swing her legs off the couch. I caught her shoulder and pushed her back down. Not rough, just firm enough to keep her in place. "Don't," I said. She looked at me. "Someone's here." "I know." Carson sat forward in the chair. "Should we?" "No." The second knock came before he finished the sentence. Heavier this time, more insistent, the kind of knock that expected an answer. Megan's breathing got faster. I kept my hand on her shoulder and didn't move. I probably should have been scared. Maybe I was, but mostly I just felt this cold clarity settle over me. The same thing that happened when a server went down at 2 in the morning and I had to troubleshoot before the clinic opened. Problem in front of me. Steps to take. Don't do anything stupid. The knock came again. Same rhythm, same weight. I stood up slowly and walked to the door. The lantern on the coffee table threw my shadow across the wall, long and distorted. I stopped about a foot from the door and leaned forward to check the peephole. Uniform. Dark navy or black, hard to tell in the porch light. County deputy style, the kind with the button-down shirt and badge over the left chest. The figure was positioned just off-center so the light hit the uniform but left the face in shadow. Intentional. Had to be. A badge flashed, gold or brass catching the light for just a second. Left hand. Deputies wore their badges on the left side of their chest. but this one was holding it in their left hand, extending it toward the peephole like I was supposed to see it and feel reassured. Wrong. Everything about it was wrong. I stayed silent, didn't move, barely breathed. Behind me, Megan whispered, "Who is it?" I didn't answer. The knocking started again, faster now. Not the slow, measured rhythm from before. This was quick, urgent, moving along the door frame like whoever was out there was testing it, looking for weak spots. The sound shifted from the center of the door to the left edge, then the right, then back to the handle. At the same time, the back door handle started rattling. Sharp, metallic jiggling, fast and rhythmic. Someone was turning it back and forth, testing the lock. Carson stood up so fast his chair scraped the floor. "There's someone at the back, too." "I know." My voice came out flat, steadier than I felt. I turned away from the peephole and walked to the kitchen window. I didn't want to look. The fog rule was still clear in my head. Close all window curtains. Do not look outside until it clears. But I had to know. I stopped at the edge of the window and angled my head just enough to see past the frame. Fog. Sliding in from the lake like a low spill. Thick and white and moving wrong. Not drifting. Pouring. It rolled across the ground in a smooth wave, already halfway between the water and the cabin, swallowing the trees and the shed and everything else in its path. I stepped back from the window. My hands were shaking. I shoved them in my pockets. "What?" Megan was on her feet now, blanket pooled on the couch behind her. "What did you see?" "Fog," I said. "From the lake." Carson moved toward the front door. "We need to get out of here." "No." "Steven, someone's trying to get in. We follow the rule." He stared at me. "What rule?" "If fog rolls in from the lake, close all window curtains and do not look outside until it clears. That doesn't help us with whoever's at the door. We don't open it. We don't look outside. We wait." Carson turned toward the table where we'd left the car keys after unloading groceries. He grabbed them, held them up. "We run for the car, right now. All three of us." I looked at the keys in his hand. Silver Toyota fob with a black rubber grip. Keyring with a tiny carabiner I'd bought at REI 2 years ago. I had no memory of putting them on the table. I'd had them in my jacket pocket when we came back inside. I was sure of it. I remembered the weight of them pulling the fabric down on one side while I stood at the window watching the dock. But there they were, on the table, right where Carson could grab them. "Put those down," I said. "We need to go." "Put them down." He didn't. He gripped them tighter and looked at the back door. The handle was still rattling. The knocking at the front had stopped, but I could hear something else now. A faint scraping sound, low and rhythmic, like fingernails dragging across wood. I moved to the living room window and yanked the curtain shut, then the kitchen window. The fabric was thin, some kind of cheap polyester that didn't block the light completely, but it was better than nothing. Megan pulled the curtain over the small window by the front door. Her hands were shaking worse than mine. I turned back to Carson. "How long do we hold our breath?" He blinked. "What?" "The rule. If fog rolls in, close the curtains and don't look outside." "For how long?" He stared at me like I'd lost it. I looked at Megan. "Did the note say?" She shook her head. "It just said until it clears." "We can't see if it clears if we don't look outside." "Then we wait," she said. Her voice was small, but steady. "We just wait." I sat down on the couch, pulled my knees up, pressed my back against the cushions. "Sit," I said. Megan sat beside me. Carson stayed standing for another 5 seconds, then dropped into the armchair, still holding the keys. The back door handle stopped rattling. The scraping at the front door continued, slow, methodical. I counted my breaths. In through the nose, out through the mouth. 60 breaths felt arbitrary, but it was something to hold on to. A number, a finish line. 1, 2, 3. At breath 7, I saw movement outside the living room window, a shadow passing across the thin curtain, tall and slow. At breath 12, something thumped against the side of the cabin. Not a knock, just a dull, heavy thud, like someone leaning their full weight against the wall. At breath 18, I looked at the yard through the gap where the curtain didn't quite meet the window frame. Shapes, standing motionless in the fog. 4 of them, maybe 5. Hard to tell with the way the fog moved. They were just outlines, no details, but they were person-shaped, person-sized. One of them stood in the same posture Megan had when she was anxious. Weight on one leg, arms crossed, head tilted slightly to the right. I watched it shift, the elbow bent backward. Wrong direction. Joints don't go that way. I looked away and kept counting. 23, 24, 25. At breath 31, the front doorknob started turning. Slow, smooth, like someone had a key and was taking their time with it. I didn't move, didn't breathe for a second, then forced myself to keep going. 32, 33. The knob stopped turning. The door didn't open. At breath 46, Carson's lantern started flickering, on and off in quick bursts, throwing jagged shadows across the walls. At breath 52, Megan grabbed my hand and squeezed hard enough to hurt. At breath 59, Carson stood up. His eyes were half closed. His face was slack, empty. He turned toward the back door and started walking. Not like he'd decided to leave, like something was pulling him. I didn't think about it. Carson was halfway to the back door with that empty look on his face, and I just moved. I grabbed his shoulder and yanked him backward. He didn't stop walking. His feet kept going through the motion, even though I had him pulled back against my chest. He twisted hard, not like he was trying to get away from me, but like something else was pulling him forward, and I was just an obstacle. His elbow caught me in the ribs. I got my other arm around his chest and dragged him toward the couch. He fought me the whole way, not fighting exactly, resisting. His body was stiff, his arms locked at his sides, and when I tried to turn him, he moved in this weird sleepwalking shuffle that felt wrong, like his joints weren't bending right. Megan was on her feet saying something, but I couldn't hear her over the sound of Carson making this low noise in his throat. Not a word, just a hum. I shoved him down onto the couch and he immediately tried to stand again. I pushed him back down. He stood. I pushed him again, harder this time, and his head snapped back and his teeth caught my knuckle. Pain shot up my hand, sharp and immediate. I pulled back and looked down. Blood was running down my index finger from a split across the knuckle, a clean line maybe half an inch long. It didn't hurt as much as it should have. I watched the blood drip onto the floor, 2 drops, 3, and then I felt it. The rattling at the back door stopped, just like that. Mid-shake, I looked up. Carson was still on the couch, but his eyes were clearing, blinking fast like he'd just woken up. Megan was staring at my hand. The cabin was quiet. I walked to the kitchen window and pulled the curtain back an inch. The fog was thinning, not drifting away, thinning, like someone had turned down the opacity on a layer in Photoshop. I could see the outline of the trees again, then the shed, then the dock. 30 seconds, and it was gone completely. Megan asked if I was okay. I said yeah, I was lying. My hand was still bleeding, and my ribs hurt where Carson's elbow had caught me, and I had no idea what the hell had just happened except that it had stopped. Carson was looking at his hands like he didn't recognize them. He said he didn't remember standing up. He said he just felt like he needed to go outside, and then I was pulling him back, and he didn't know why he'd wanted to leave. I told him to stay on the couch. He nodded. I went to the kitchen sink and turned on the tap. Cold water ran over the split knuckle, and it stung, but not enough. I needed the salt. The sticky note had said to rinse any bleeding injury with salt solution immediately and not let blood enter the water. It also said to leave the used packet on the back step. I hadn't understood that part when I first read it, but now I figured it was some kind of offering, something to mark that the rule had been followed. I opened the cabinet under the sink. The spray bottle labeled "Salt Rinse for Injuries Only" was there, but I reached past it and grabbed the Ziploc bag with the single salt packet instead. The sticky note was still in the bag. I pulled out the packet, tore it open with my teeth, and poured the salt directly into the cut. It burned. Actually burned, like I'd pressed my knuckle to a stove burner. I gritted my teeth and kept grinding the salt into the wound with my thumb, pushing it deeper, making sure it got everywhere. The pain spiked, and I had to brace my other hand on the counter to stay upright. But it worked. The pain kept me focused, kept me here, in the cabin, in my body, not drifting toward whatever the fog wanted. I rinsed my hand under the tap again, watching pink water spiral down the drain. The bleeding had slowed. I wrapped a paper towel around my knuckle and held it tight. Then I walked to the back door. Megan asked what I was doing. I said following the rule. She didn't argue. I unlocked the deadbolt, when had I locked it, and opened the door just wide enough to toss the empty salt packet onto the back step. It landed flat, the torn corner pointing toward the lake. I shut the door immediately and locked it again. Carson said that was weird. I told him everything tonight was weird. He didn't disagree. We sat there for a while. I don't know how long. My watch said 12:51, but that felt wrong. Felt like hours had passed. Megan fell asleep first, still wrapped in the blanket, her head against the armrest. Carson followed maybe 20 minutes later, his lantern still on beside him. I stayed awake, kept my eyes on the windows, the doors, my bleeding hand. At some point I checked my phone. The voicemail icon was gone. I stared at the screen. It had been there earlier. One new voicemail, no number attached, time-stamped 11 minutes after we'd arrived. I hadn't played it, and now it was just gone. I unlocked the phone and opened the voicemail app. Empty. No messages, no missed calls, nothing. Then the icon reappeared, just flickered back into existence at the top of the screen. One new voicemail. But this time there was a name attached. Madeline Perkins. I felt my stomach drop. The earlier voicemail had been blank. No number, no name. This one had her name spelled out in clean black text, and the timestamp now read 8:32 p.m., hours before the power had gone out. I held the phone away from me like it might bite. I didn't play it. I don't know why. Maybe because I knew whatever was on that message wouldn't help. Maybe because I didn't want to hear her voice telling me something I should have already figured out. I locked the phone and set it face down on the coffee table. Then I opened the Airbnb app. The message thread with Madeline loaded slowly, the signal barely holding. 3 bars, then 2, then 1. The most recent message was from me, sent 2 days ago. Sounds great, see you Friday. But now there was a new message above it, unread, time-stamped 6:14 p.m., right around the time we'd been on the dock. I opened it. Hi, Stephen. Just a quick heads up. There's been some trouble with the power grid on the east side this week. So frustrating, I know. If the lights go out tonight, don't worry. A county deputy will stop by at first light to offer an escort back to the main road just to make sure everyone gets out safely. Please accept the ride. It's the safest option. Thanks for being such wonderful guests. I read it twice. The emoji at the end made my skin crawl. It was the same kind Madeline had used on the laminated rules sheet. Cheerful, friendly, completely disconnected from the actual content of the message. She knew the power would go out. She knew something would come. She knew we'd need an escort. And she'd written it all down in advance, time-stamped it hours before it happened, and sent it like a friendly reminder to check the Wi-Fi password. Carson stirred in the armchair but didn't wake up. Megan shifted under the blanket. I set the phone down and leaned back against the couch. The rest of the night passed in silence. I didn't sleep. I kept the lantern on and watched the windows until the darkness outside started to thin. Black turning to charcoal, turning to dull gray. At 6:23, the first real light came through the curtains. At 6:31, I heard gravel crunching outside. I stood and walked to the window, pulling the curtain back just enough to see. A white patrol SUV with a light bar on top was pulling up the driveway, moving slowly over the gravel. County Sheriff logo on the door. Clean paint job. No dents. It stopped next to my car. The driver's side door opened and a man stepped out. He was tall, maybe 6'1", broad shoulders, dark hair cropped short under a patrol cap. County deputy uniform, duty belt, badge on his chest. He looked official, looked real. He walked toward the cabin with slow, deliberate steps and stopped at the base of the deck stairs. Then he called out, "Morning. Got a report about power issues out here. You folks okay?" His voice was flat, not unfriendly, just rehearsed. Megan sat up on the couch, blinking. Carson woke up and looked around, confused. I didn't move from the window. The deputy raised his right hand. He was holding his badge in it, extended toward the cabin like he wanted us to see it clearly. That was wrong. Deputies wear their badges on the left side of their chest, stitched or pinned to the uniform. They don't carry them around in their hands unless they're showing ID during a traffic stop. And even then, they pull a wallet, not the badge itself. I stared at the badge in his hand. It looked real. Shiny metal, engraved county seal, correct shape. But he was holding it in his right hand. And Madeline's message had told us to accept the ride. I stepped back from the window. Carson asked if that was the deputy Madeline mentioned. I said yeah. Megan asked if we should go. I didn't answer. The deputy called out again. "Main road's clear now. I can escort you back. Make sure you don't hit any trouble on the way out." His tone hadn't changed. Still flat. Still rehearsed. I looked at the badge in his hand and understood. Whatever had come at night, the figure on the dock, the shapes in the fog, the thing that had pulled Carson toward the door, it could imitate the rules. It could follow them, twist them, use them. And now it was standing outside holding a badge in the wrong hand, offering us exactly what Madeline had said we should accept. I told them to get in our car. Not the cruiser. Our car. Megan looked at me, then at the deputy still standing at the bottom of the deck stairs holding that badge in his wrong hand. Carson was already halfway to the door. I grabbed his shoulder and pulled him back hard enough that he stumbled. "We're taking our own car," I said, loud enough the deputy would hear. "You can follow us out." The deputy tilted his head. Just a fraction. The movement didn't look right. Too smooth, like his neck was on a swivel instead of vertebrae. "Escort protocol requires passengers in the county vehicle," he said. Same flat, rehearsed tone. "Safer that way." I didn't answer. I grabbed my keys off the table where Carson had left them, shoved my phone in my pocket, and pointed Megan toward the door. She went. Carson hesitated, looking back at the deputy, but I pushed him forward and he moved. Outside, the air was cold and damp. The patrol SUV sat next to my car, engine still running, exhaust puffing white in the early light. The deputy watched us descend the stairs. I unlocked my car with the fob, opened the back door, and told Carson to get in. He did. Megan climbed into the passenger seat. I got behind the wheel, started the engine, and locked the doors from the inside. The deputy walked to his SUV. Slow, deliberate. He opened the driver's door and climbed in without looking at us again. I reversed down the driveway, turned onto the narrow road, and started driving toward the main route. My hands were shaking. I gripped the wheel tighter to hide it. The patrol SUV pulled out behind us and followed at a distance of maybe 20 feet. Close enough I could see the light bar and the county logo in my rear-view mirror. Close enough I couldn't shake the feeling he was herding us somewhere instead of escorting us out. Megan sat with her arms wrapped around herself, staring straight ahead. Carson leaned forward between the seats and asked if I thought the deputy was real. I didn't answer. I didn't know. The road curved through trees, narrow and cracked pavement with gravel shoulders. I passed the turnoff we'd taken yesterday to reach the cabin. The patrol SUV stayed behind us, matching my speed exactly. 40 miles per hour, then 35 when I slowed for a pothole, then 40 again. We came around a bend, and I saw the boat launch up ahead on the left. Public access ramp, gravel lot, wooden dock extending into the water. I'd seen it on the drive-in yesterday. There was a truck parked near the ramp now. Someone loading gear or preparing to fish. Normal. The patrol SUV's light bar flashed once. Red and blue strobing in my mirror for maybe 2 seconds, then off again. My engine died. No sputter, no warning, just dead. The wheel locked and the dashboard went dark and we were rolling forward on momentum alone. I tried the ignition. Nothing. Tried again. Nothing. The engine didn't even turn over. The patrol SUV pulled alongside us. Smooth. Fast. It matched our coasting speed and the deputy leaned toward his passenger window, which was down now even though it hadn't been a second ago. "Escort has to be in the cruiser," he said. Not loud, not angry, just stating a fact. "Come on out now." Megan made a small noise in her throat. The deputy's hand came out through the window and reached for her door handle. His left hand, fingers extending toward the handle in a motion that looked automatic, practiced, like a habit slipping through whatever he was pretending to be. I shoved the gear shift into neutral and the car rolled faster. Downhill. The boat launch was maybe 60 yards ahead and the slope pulled us toward it. The deputy's hand missed the handle and he pulled back inside the SUV, which swerved slightly before correcting. "Stephen," Megan started. I didn't let her finish. The car picked up speed and I steered toward the gravel lot, letting gravity do the work. 30 yards, 20. The patrol SUV accelerated and pulled ahead, cutting us off, stopping diagonally across the entrance to the lot with the driver's door already opening. I yanked the wheel hard right and we veered onto the shoulder, bouncing over rocks and roots. The car lurched to a stop against a low berm. I unlocked the doors, shoved mine open, and yelled at Megan to run. She didn't move fast enough. I grabbed her arm and pulled her out my side. Carson scrambled out the back. The deputy was already coming around the front of the SUV, moving faster than he should have been able to move, boots crunching gravel in long strides. The dock. 30 feet away. And the canoe. We'd left it on the beach yesterday, but it was here now, flipped over on the rocky shore beside the dock like someone had moved it, or like it had moved itself. I ran for it. Megan stumbled behind me and I didn't let go of her arm. Carson was somewhere to my left, but I didn't look. I reached the canoe, flipped it right side up with one hand, and dragged it toward the water. Aluminum scraped over rocks. Megan helped without me asking, grabbing the side and pulling. The deputy's hand closed around Carson's shoulder. Carson stopped. Just stopped. His whole body went slack and he dropped to his knees on the gravel, head lolling forward. It didn't look like he'd fainted. It looked forced, puppeted. I shoved the canoe into the shallows and turned back. The deputy was crouched beside Carson now, one hand still on his shoulder, the other reaching for Carson's face. I got a clear look at him for the first time. His face was wrong. Not disfigured, not injured, just wrong, assembled incorrectly. His eyes sat at slightly different angles, one maybe a quarter-inch higher than the other. His mouth was too wide and the corners didn't quite meet the rest of his expression, like someone had described a deputy's face from memory and built one that was close, but not exact. He looked up at me, smiled. His teeth were perfect and white and even. "Get in the cruiser," he said. I looked at the canoe. At Megan already climbing in, her hands shaking so hard she could barely grip the sides. at Carson on his knees with his eyes half closed and that thing's hand on his shoulder. I had one salt packet left. I'd shoved it in my pocket last night after using the first one on my knuckle. My hand went to my jeans, and I felt the small square of paper through the fabric. There was a jagged screw sticking out from the canoe's back bench where the aluminum was riveted to the frame. Rough edge, sharp enough. I grabbed it and dragged my palm across it hard. The pain was immediate and bright, and the skin split in a clean line from the base of my thumb to my wrist. Blood welled up fast, dripping onto the rocks. The deputy's head snapped toward me. His smile disappeared. I jumped into the water, knee-deep, freezing. I shoved my bleeding hand under the surface and ripped open the salt packet with my teeth, dumping the entire thing into the lake around my submerged palm. The water hissed, not bubbled, hissed, like I'd poured it onto a hot stove. It boiled in a tight circle around my hand, white foam rising, and the deputy staggered backward 3 steps. His hand came off Carson's shoulder, his face twisted, mouth pulling too far left, eyes shifting angles again. I grabbed the canoe and shoved off. Megan was already in the middle bench, gripping both sides. I hauled myself into the back and grabbed the cracked paddle from the bottom of the canoe where it had been lying the whole time. Something pushed up beneath us. Not a bump. A slow, deliberate pressure from below, lifting the canoe's center and tilting us sideways. I dug the paddle into the water and stroked hard to the right, correcting. The pressure followed, moving toward the back. I looked over my shoulder. The unlit boat was there, maybe 40 yards out. Dark hull, no motor, no oars. It had been drifting when I'd seen it last night from the cabin window. Now it was turning, slowly, deliberately, bow swinging in our direction. I paddled faster. Megan was saying something, but I couldn't hear her over the blood pounding in my ears. The public ramp was ahead, the real one. The one with the truck parked beside it and a man standing near the water in a fishing vest and boots. The shoreline snapped back into focus. Color returning, detail sharpening. The trees went from flat gray to green and brown. The sky went from dull to overcast, but normal. The man by the ramp turned and stared at us. I aimed straight for him. The canoe hit the shallows and scraped gravel. I jumped out, nearly fell, caught myself, and grabbed Megan's arm. She climbed out, and I hauled her toward the shore, toward the man who was backing up now with his hands raised, like we were dangerous. "Help," I said, or tried to say. It came out hoarse and broken. I held up my hand. Blood and salt streaked down my palm, dripping onto the rocks. The man, maybe 60, gray hair under a faded cap, looked at my hand and went pale. I turned. The deputy was standing at the waterline maybe 20 yards down the shore, not moving, not approaching, just standing there with his wrong assembled face and his hand still extended like he'd been reaching for us, but he wasn't coming closer. The man in the fishing vest was a witness, a real person, someone outside whatever pocket of wrong we'd been trapped in. And the deputy couldn't cross that line, not in front of him. Carson was gone. I looked for him and saw nothing. No body on the gravel, no shape near the patrol SUV, just empty shore and the cruiser sitting with its door still open and engine still running. I didn't look back again. The man in the vest asked if we were okay. I said no. He asked if we needed help. I said yes. He pulled out a phone and said he'd call someone. I told him to call the county sheriff. Real sheriff, not the deputy. He looked confused, but he nodded. By noon, I got Megan to a clinic in Sandpoint. Small building off the main road, white siding, blue sign that said, "Urgent Care" in block letters. The woman at the front desk took one look at Megan, shaking, pale, wrapped in a blanket I'd grabbed from my car, and brought us straight back. The nurse's name was Stella Knight, dark hair pulled into a tight bun, scrubs with small coffee stains on the hem, calm voice. She examined Megan's hands and arms, checking for cuts. Found a few. Small scratches on her forearms, one deeper cut on her left palm from grabbing the canoe. Nothing serious. Stella cleaned them with antiseptic that smelled sharp and chemical, applied bandages, and asked what happened. I said we had an accident at the lake. Stella didn't push. She checked Megan's pupils with a small flashlight, asked her to follow her finger left and right, asked if she felt dizzy or nauseous. Megan said no to everything. Stella made notes on a clipboard and said Megan was fine physically but should rest. She looked at me and asked if I needed anything checked. I said no. My palm had stopped bleeding an hour ago. I'd wrapped it with a t-shirt from my car and the salt had done whatever it was supposed to do. Stella told us to wait in the lobby. She left. Came back 10 minutes later with a woman in a deputy uniform. Real uniform this time. Stitched badge on the left chest, duty belt worn properly, body camera clipped to the front. The deputy's name was Kinsley Chapman. Light brown hair and a low ponytail, gray eyes with dark circles underneath. Tired voice. She asked if we could talk. I said yes. We sat in a side room with plastic chairs and motivational posters on the walls. Kinsley turned on her body camera, stated the date and time, June 7th, 12:41 p.m., and asked me to describe what happened. I told her. Rented a cabin on Priest Lake's east side. Power went out. A man claiming to be a county deputy showed up offering an escort. We left in our own car. The car died near the boat launch. We escaped in a canoe. My sister's boyfriend Carson Barton was taken. Kinsley wrote everything down in a small notebook, her pen moving in quick, efficient strokes. She asked for Carson's full name, age, physical description. I gave her everything I knew. 21, sandy blonde hair, gray-blue eyes, 5'10", maybe 160. Last seen wearing a hoodie and jeans. She asked where I last saw him. I said on the gravel near the boat launch, held by someone dressed as a deputy. She asked if I could describe this person. I said tall, dark hair, county uniform, wrong face. She asked what I meant by wrong face. I said the features didn't line up correctly. Kinsley stopped writing. She looked at me for a long moment, her expression flat and unreadable. Then she went back to her notebook and wrote something else. She asked if I knew the deputy's name or badge number. I said no. She asked if I'd gotten the cruiser's plate number. I said no. She asked if the fisherman at the ramp had seen Carson. I said I didn't know. I hadn't asked. She closed her notebook. Told me Carson would be recorded as missing, last seen at Priest Lake. Told me someone would follow up. Told me not to leave the state. I nodded. She turned off her body camera and left. Megan was still in the lobby when I came out, sitting in a plastic chair with the blanket pulled tight around her shoulders. I told her we were going home. She didn't argue. I drove us back to Spokane that night. Didn't stop except once for gas outside Coeur d'Alene. Megan fell asleep in the passenger seat somewhere past Hayden and didn't wake up until we hit city limits. I dropped her at her dorm, walked her to the door, waited until she was inside. Then I sat in my car in the parking lot and opened my phone. The voicemail icon was still there. 3 messages now, all from Madeline Perkins, all time-stamped from yesterday and last night. I deleted them without listening, held down each one, and pressed delete. They disappeared from the list one by one. I opened the Airbnb app, searched for Pinecrest Cottage. The listing didn't come up. I searched for Madeline Perkins. No results. I went into my trip history and found the booking confirmation from 4 days ago. Clicked on it. The page loaded blank, white screen, no property details, no host profile. Just an error message that said, "This listing is no longer available." I closed the app, drove to my apartment. Didn't sleep. The missing person report came up twice over the next month. Once when a detective called asking follow-up questions about Carson's last known location. Once when Megan's parents asked me what really happened. I kept my explanation simple both times. We rented a cabin. Carson disappeared near the lake. I didn't see where he went. I reported it to the county sheriff. I didn't mention the rules. Didn't mention the fog or the voicemails or the deputy with the wrong face. Didn't mention that I'd chosen to save Megan and leave Carson behind because I couldn't get them both into the canoe fast enough. And I'd made a choice in 3 seconds that I'd have to live with forever. I never went back to Priest Lake. Deleted my Airbnb account 2 weeks later. Stopped taking my sister's calls for a while because every time I heard her voice, I remembered her climbing into that canoe and Carson dropping to his knees on the gravel. I couldn't afford another mistake. That was it. I'd already made the one that mattered, and Carson was gone, and no amount of explaining or going back or trying again would change it. So, I didn't try.